Michael Hayes, 40, CEO of Chicago's leading real estate firm, stands alone amid gleaming skyscrapers, haunted by a secret he's never been able to forget. Today, his world shifts in the rain-slick streets of Bronzeville, where he spots a ragged boy at a newspaper stand, 12-year-old Caleb with golden hair and blue eyes identical to his own. A battered badge hanging from Caleb's neck shimmers under neon light, and Michael's heart races as he realizes it once belonged to his ex-partner. Pulling Caleb into a warm restaurant booth, Michael listens as the boy describes nights on these very sidewalks, surviving on scraps and headlines. Guilt floods him when he learns Caleb's mother died alone, never daring to reveal her son's existence. DNA tests confirm the truth. This street-smart boy is Michael's son, the child he abandoned after a bitter breakup. Michael whisks Caleb away to his mansion, transforming an empty guest room into a graffiti studio, Caleb's refuge and the spark of their first bond. Yet, luxury chills the boy, who mistrusts handouts and clings to his corner of spray paint and buckets. Can Michael's grand gestures bridge years of pain? Tonight, he vows to protect Caleb from the press and corporate critics. Tomorrow, he'll stand before a charity crowd, pledging scholarships and street art programs, while Caleb sketches murals for neighborhood kids. Will these two rebuild a family that was lost? Subscribe to see this heartfelt story unfold. Rain streaked across the tall windows of Michael Hayes' penthouse, a quiet rhythm tapping against glass as night crept over Chicago. He stood motionless in the center of the room, staring out at the skyline. Towers he'd built, deals he'd won, empires he'd expanded. But none of it filled the silence left behind. On the fireplace mantel sat a single photograph untouched by time. A woman with soft eyes smiled beside him, her arm wrapped around a toddler. The boy's hair gleamed like sunlight. His eyes, bright and blue, were exact reflections of Michael's own. Michael exhaled slowly, picking up the frame. His fingers brushed the edge. "I lost more than I ever built," he whispered. The phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another client, another contract. He ignored it. Instead, he walked toward a sleek black drawer and opened it. Inside was a red toy car, chipped at the corners, but whole. It had been his son's favorite, left behind after the breakup. Michael picked it up, held it in his palm. The last custody hearing still haunted him. Accusations, lawyers, slammed doors. His ex had vanished after that. No address, no goodbye, just silence. And the boy, his boy, gone. A knock sounded at the door. Michael tensed. "Mr. Hayes?" It was Tanya, his assistant, her voice muffled but clear. "Your car's ready for the inspection. The team's waiting." "I'll be down in 5, he called back. He slipped the red car into his coat pocket, its small weight grounding him. Downstairs, the air was different, heavy with exhaust and the buzz of city life. His black sedan waited curbside, engine humming. He slid in, nodding to the driver. "Bronzeville, Old Parkview Block." The driver raised an eyebrow. "That area's rough now. Sure you want to go alone?" Michael gave a faint smile. "I need to see it myself." As they drove, memories clung to the streets. He remembered that neighborhood, where he and Lena used to walk with their son, back when money didn't matter and love was enough. But something had cracked. Her struggle with addiction, his obsession with work, the trust between them thinned until it snapped. The car slowed near an old corner store, cracked bricks, faded graffiti. A rusted bus stop sign tilted sideways. "Stop here," Michael said. He stepped out into the drizzle, coat collar raised. The scent of wet concrete filled his lungs. He passed boarded windows and flickering street lamps. It wasn't just the buildings that had aged. It was him. Every step back into this world carved something deeper in his chest. Ahead, a small convenience store remained open. Michael approached, ducking under its awning. Through the glass, he spotted an old man behind the counter. "Hey," Michael said as he entered, rain dripping from his coat. "I'm looking for someone. 12, maybe 13. Blonde hair, real blue eyes. Name might be Caleb." The man gave a half shrug. "Kid's always selling papers out front. Bright one, doesn't talk much." Michael's breath caught. "He comes here often?" "Every evening, like clockwork." Michael turned slowly. Outside, under a flickering streetlight, stood a boy. Thin, worn sneakers, arms wrapped around a bundle of newspapers, and eyes, unmistakable, like his own staring back at him through years of time lost. He stepped outside, heart pounding. "Hey, kid!" Michael called out. The boy looked up. Michael froze. It was like seeing a ghost he never expected to meet again. "Where'd you get that?" Michael asked softly, eyes falling on the badge hanging around the boy's neck. Silver, old, tarnished. The boy clutched it. "It was my mom's," he said. "She said it was from someone important." Michael's legs felt unsteady. That badge. He had given it to Lena after their first big deal. No one else could have had it. The boy's face was guarded, but curious. "What's your name?" Michael asked. "Caleb." Michael felt the name hit him like thunder. He glanced at the badge, then back at the boy, and the red toy car in his pocket suddenly felt like it had never left home. The cold wind whipped down the narrow street, tugging at Michael's coat as he stepped closer. Caleb stood frozen, papers clutched to his chest, unsure whether to run or stay. Michael crouched slowly, voice soft. "That badge. I gave it to someone a long time ago. Her name was Lena. Was she your mom?" Caleb's brow furrowed. "Yeah. She passed away 2 years ago. I kept this because it's all I got from her." Michael nodded, eyes dampening. "She meant a lot to me. You remind me of someone I used to know." The boy stepped back, guarded. "Are you a cop or something?" "No. My name's Michael Hayes." Caleb blinked, recognition flickering in his eyes. "That's the name on the back of this badge." Michael felt his throat tighten. The sky above them darkened, street lamps buzzing overhead. "You got somewhere warm to sleep?" Michael asked. Caleb shrugged. "Sometimes the shelter, sometimes not." Michael stood. "You hungry?" Caleb hesitated, then nodded slowly. Together they walked to a diner on the corner. Inside, the smell of grilled cheese and tomato soup wrapped around them like a blanket. Michael ordered 2 meals and watched Caleb devour his in minutes. It was more than hunger. It was survival. Between bites, Caleb asked, "How'd you know my mom?" Michael swallowed hard. "We were close. A long time ago. I didn't know she had a son. She said the man left, that he didn't want us." Michael looked down, the red toy car still in his coat pocket pressing against his side like a bruise. "That's not true," he said quietly. "I didn't even know about you." Caleb leaned back. "So, what now?" Michael pulled a business card from his wallet and slid it across the table. "I'd like to help. A warm place to sleep, real food, a shower, no strings, just until we figure things out." Caleb stared at the card. "You don't even know if I'm yours." "I know what I see," Michael said. "But, if it's okay with you, I'd like to run a DNA test, just to be sure." The boy's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm lying?" "No," Michael replied. "I think the world's been unfair to both of us." They sat in silence for a beat, broken only by the clink of Caleb's spoon. "You live in one of those big glass towers?" he asked finally. "Yeah, I built them." Caleb smirked. "And I sell papers on the sidewalk outside one." Michael gave a small, pained smile. "Maybe we're not so far apart." After dinner, Michael walked him to the car. The driver looked confused but opened the door without question. Caleb hesitated, then climbed in. Inside the sedan, warm and clean, Caleb clutched his badge tight. Michael noticed. "That badge. It meant a lot to your mom. She said it came from someone she loved once. But love doesn't last," she said. Michael stared out the window, his reflection faint. "Sometimes we let fear ruin what matters." The car pulled into the private entrance of Michael's building. As they rode the elevator up, Caleb glanced around at the marble and mirrors. "This place smells like lemons and silence," he said. Michael laughed, surprised. "You're not wrong." When they stepped into the penthouse, Caleb's eyes widened. "This is huge." Michael led him to a guest room, flicking on the lights. The walls were bare, the bed made, the air unfamiliar. Caleb walked to the corner and dropped his duffel bag. "Can I draw on the wall?" Michael paused, then smiled. "Tell you what, tomorrow I'll get you your own art wall." Caleb looked up. "Really?" Michael nodded. "Every artist needs a canvas." The boy nodded slowly, still unsure. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a sketch of a tall building with a kid on the roof, arms stretched wide. "I call it Almost Home," he said. Michael felt the lump rise in his throat again. He knelt, unfolding the paper carefully. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Caleb shrugged. "Just something I see in my head." Michael looked him in the eye. "You've got more in you than the world's ever seen." Caleb stared at him for a second, then quietly said, "Good night, Mr. Hayes." Michael closed the door gently. "Good night, son," he whispered to the hallway. Morning light spilled through the penthouse windows, casting soft gold across the hardwood floors. Michael stood at the kitchen island, pouring orange juice into 2 glasses. He glanced toward the hallway, where Caleb's door remained shut. He hadn't heard a sound all night. When Caleb finally emerged, his hair a tousled mess, he moved slowly, eyeing the space like it might disappear. "Hey," Michael said gently, "sleep okay?" The boy shrugged. "Too quiet." Michael smiled. "I know the feeling. Took me years to get used to it." Caleb slid into a stool at the counter, eyes scanning the sleek granite and chrome. He grabbed a slice of toast without asking. "I have something for you," Michael said, reaching into his coat pocket. He set the red toy car between them. Caleb's eyes widened. "That's mine." Michael nodded. "You left it at my place. A long time ago." The boy picked it up, thumb tracing the chipped paint. "Mom said it got lost." "It never did," Michael said softly. A long pause settled between them. Then Caleb looked up. "Why didn't you come find us?" Michael's throat tightened. "I tried, but after the court ruling, she left no trail. I didn't know where to start." "She said you were too busy with buildings to care," Caleb muttered. Michael's heart sank. "She was angry, and I made mistakes, but not caring. That was never true." Caleb didn't answer. He just held the car tighter. Later that morning, Michael took him downtown to meet a lawyer. The office smelled of old paper and lavender. "I want to make sure he's safe," Michael told the woman at the desk. "We're starting with a paternity test." Caleb sat still, arms folded, eyes on the floor. "You okay with this?" Michael asked. The boy nodded once. "Let's just get it over with." The nurse took a quick swab, explaining everything as she worked. Caleb didn't flinch. Back in the car, silence returned. Then Caleb asked, "What if the test says I'm not yours?" Michael turned. "It won't. You sound sure." "I've seen your eyes," Michael said, voice steady, "and I gave you that badge." Caleb pulled it from under his hoodie, the silver catching sunlight. "Mom said it was her lucky charm," he murmured. Michael smiled faintly. "It brought you back to me." They returned to the penthouse, the city glowing behind them. That afternoon, Michael led Caleb to a guest room now transformed. White walls covered in fresh canvases, paint supplies lining the desk. "I thought you might want your own space," Michael said. "To draw, to dream." Caleb blinked. "All this for me?" Michael nodded. "Every artist needs a place to speak." Caleb stepped in slowly, touching the brushes. "I've never had a whole room before." Michael watched from the doorway, emotions tangled. "Do you like it?" he asked. The boy picked up a paint marker. "Can I draw on the window?" Michael hesitated, then smiled. "Go ahead." Caleb uncapped the marker and began sketching. A boy holding a balloon on a rooftop, the wind bending the string, the city behind him alive with color. Michael stepped beside him. "What's his name?" Caleb didn't look up. "Don't know yet. He just wants to fly." That night, after Caleb fell asleep surrounded by color, Michael sat in his office, staring at the DNA consent form. He hadn't realized how much hope he'd buried beneath steel and stone. Then his phone buzzed. A text from the lab. "Test complete. Results in 24 hours." He closed his eyes, the red toy car on the desk beside him. Outside, the city kept moving, but inside something had finally begun to stand still. The waiting, the wondering. Michael looked toward Caleb's room. No matter what the paper said tomorrow, one thing was clear. He wasn't going to lose him again. The next morning, the sun filtered through clouds, soft and gray over the city. Michael sat at the edge of his bed, phone in hand, staring at the message he hadn't opened yet. The DNA results. He inhaled, tapped the screen, and read. Paternity confirmed. Probability 99.99%. His grip tightened around the phone. The confirmation didn't surprise him, but the weight of it, of all the missed years, crushed his chest. A knock on the door pulled him back. "Hey!" Caleb called. "There's no milk." Michael stood, pocketed the phone, and opened the door. "We'll grab breakfast downstairs." Caleb nodded, hoodie already pulled over his messy hair. As they walked through the marble-floored lobby, Michael glanced at the boy beside him. Same eyes, same stride, but hardened by life. They sat in a quiet corner of the cafe. Caleb dumped sugar into his cereal, then looked up. "So, any news?" Michael swallowed his sip of coffee. "Yeah." The boy raised an eyebrow. "You're my son, Caleb." Caleb's spoon froze midair. "I knew it," he muttered, then added, "She lied to both of us." Michael leaned forward. "I'm sorry. I should have done more sooner." Caleb shrugged, masking hurt behind a bite of cereal. "You were building skyscrapers. I was selling newspapers." Michael reached into his pocket and placed the red toy car on the table. "But I never stopped thinking about this." Caleb looked at it for a moment. Then he whispered, "She kept telling me you didn't want me, that I ruined your life." Michael's voice cracked. "She was wrong. I just didn't know. I promise you, if I had—" Caleb looked away, jaw clenched. "I slept in a basement last winter. No heat. Just a tarp and a flashlight. Some nights I'd imagine what kind of dad you were, then I'd stop, 'cause it made it worse." Michael felt the sting behind his eyes. "I can't erase that, Caleb, but I can give you now, and whatever comes next." The boy didn't reply. He just shoved another spoonful in his mouth. Later that afternoon, Michael took him to the park. Not a polished downtown one, but a cracked cement lot in Bronzeville, where graffiti walls lined the fence. Caleb's eyes lit up the second he saw them. "This is where I used to come. Me and another kid would paint late at night when nobody watched." Michael handed him a spray can. "Then show me." Caleb hesitated. "You serious?" Michael nodded. The boy walked to the wall, shook the can, and began sketching with bold, confident strokes. Slowly, a mural took shape. A boy standing on a rooftop, holding a red car in one hand, reaching for the sky with the other. Michael stepped closer, watching in silence. "You see," Caleb said, stepping back. "He wants out, but he still remembers where he came from." Michael's voice was soft. "That boy's you." Caleb wiped his fingers on his jeans. "He was. I'm not sure who I am now." Michael looked at him, really looked. "You're my son. You're strong, and you're an artist." The boy glanced sideways. "You think so?" "I know so." They stood side by side as the sun began to fall, casting long shadows across the pavement. Back at the penthouse, Caleb sat on the floor of his art room, red marker in hand. He scribbled onto the canvas near the edge. "We found each other." Michael watched from the doorway, emotion caught in his throat. Before bed, Caleb approached him quietly. "Thanks for letting me paint, and for not calling me a mistake." Michael knelt to his level. "You were never a mistake. You're the best thing I never knew I had." Caleb looked down, then slowly reached into his pocket. He handed Michael the badge. "Here, it should be with you now." Michael held it carefully. "You sure?" "Yeah," Caleb said. "It brought me to you. Now maybe it'll keep us together." Michael smiled, eyes wet. "Then I'll never let it go." That evening, the city pulsed outside the penthouse windows, but inside, all was still. Michael stood in the doorway of Caleb's new room, watching the boy crouched on the floor, sketching with quiet focus. "You hungry?" Michael asked gently. Caleb glanced up. "Kinda. I was thinking we could go out tonight. Somewhere casual. Burgers, milkshakes?" Caleb looked surprised. "You mean like a real dinner?" Michael smiled. "Yeah, just us." An hour later, they sat at a corner booth in a retro diner, red vinyl seats squeaking beneath them. Caleb stirred his milkshake with a spoon, while Michael watched with quiet admiration. "Been years since I sat like this," Caleb mumbled, "with someone across the table." Michael's voice was warm. "Well, it won't be the last." As Caleb bit into his burger, Michael tapped open his phone and sent a quick message. "Lawyer, arrangements confirmed. Caleb can stay under your guardianship for now." Michael exhaled in relief, then slid the phone away. "Hey," he said, nodding toward the napkin holder. "Draw me something." Caleb raised a brow. "Now?" Michael shrugged. "Whenever inspiration strikes." Caleb pulled a napkin, grabbed a pen, and started sketching. A rooftop, a boy, a red car in the sky. He pushed it across the table. "It's called Wish Delivery." Michael stared at it, heart aching in the best way. "You're incredible, Caleb." The next morning, Michael called in his private tutor, a kind woman named Rachel with short curls and a warm laugh. "This is Caleb," Michael said. "He's starting a new chapter." Rachel offered her hand. "I'm not just here to teach. I'm here to help you dream big." Caleb looked wary, but nodded. That afternoon, they sat in the study, Caleb scribbling answers on a worksheet while Rachel guided him. Michael watched from the hallway, the scene more surreal than anything he'd built from concrete. Later, Michael brought Caleb to a private school for a tour. As they entered the art room, Caleb's eyes lit up. Easels, spray paints, sketchbooks. "You'd have access to all of this," Michael said. "Every day." Caleb crossed his arms. "It's nice, but I don't belong here." Michael crouched beside him. "Why not?" The boy looked around, voice low. "These kids wear designer shoes. I don't even trust the bed I sleep in yet." Michael nodded. "Trust takes time. But you belong, Caleb. Not because of where you came from, but because of what you're becoming." Caleb didn't answer. He just stared at a mural on the far wall. A phoenix painted in bold colors, wings rising from ash. Back home, Michael found Caleb sitting in the corner of his room, spray painting on a blank canvas leaned against the wall. "Can I show you something?" Michael asked. The boy looked up. Michael unrolled a large blueprint on the floor. "This is the first tower I ever built. I sketched it when I was 15 on the back of a pizza box." Caleb leaned in. "No way." "I was just a kid with a pencil and a stubborn dream," Michael said. "Kind of like someone I know." Caleb grinned faintly. "You saying I'm stubborn?" "I'm saying you've got it in you to build anything, even trust." The boy stared at the blueprint, then said quietly, "What if I mess up?" Michael touched the red car still on his desk. "Then we clean up and try again. That's what family does." For the first time, Caleb didn't argue. That night, Michael passed Caleb's room and paused. The door was cracked open. Inside, taped above the bed, was the napkin from the diner. Wish Delivery, drawn in black ink, and underneath it, a scribbled note. "Maybe wishes do come true." Michael closed his eyes. The badge in his coat pocket felt warm against his chest. He whispered to the dark, "We're just getting started." The rain returned 2 days later, tapping gently against the glass as Michael paced the living room. The city below felt distant, blurred by mist and memory. On the couch sat a manila folder, thick, creased and heavy with the past. It was the report from the private investigator. Michael hesitated, then opened it. A photo slid out first. Lena, his ex, from just 2 years ago. Her once bright eyes looked tired. Shoulders slumped. Hospital bracelet on her wrist. The first line of the summary punched him in the chest. Deceased, Lena Carter. Cause of death, fentanyl overdose. Found alone in an abandoned apartment in Bronzeville. Michael sat down slowly, fingers tightening around the edges. She'd never reached out, never asked for help. Inside the file were notes from neighbors. One line stood out. She always carried a badge around her neck. Said it was from someone who used to believe in her. Michael blinked hard. "Dad?" He turned. Caleb stood in the hallway, barefoot, holding a paint-stained sketchbook. "What's that?" Michael hesitated, then patted the couch. "Come here." Caleb sat beside him, cautious. Michael handed over the photo. "That's your mom, from a few years ago." The boy took it slowly. His fingers shook. "She told me she was fine. Said she was just tired all the time." "She wasn't fine, Caleb." Silence stretched between them. Then the boy whispered, "Did she try to get better?" Michael nodded. "She fought hard. But some fights, they take more than one person to win." Caleb's voice cracked. "She was scared. Of everything." "I think," Michael said gently, "she didn't think I'd want you, that I wouldn't love you if I knew." Caleb looked up sharply. "That's what she always said. That you'd moved on. That you were too important to care." Michael's jaw tightened. "She was wrong. I never stopped caring. I just didn't know how to find you." The boy looked down, the red car in his hand. "She used to rub my back when I couldn't sleep. Said one day someone would come looking, but I stopped believing that." Michael leaned forward. "I don't care what happened before. You're here now, and I'm never letting you go." That afternoon, they visited Lena's old neighborhood. Caleb hadn't been back since the day she passed. The building was boarded up. Graffiti scrawled across the bricks. "This was our window," Caleb said, pointing to the second floor. "We didn't have curtains, just paper taped over the glass." Michael walked beside him, listening. "She'd talk to herself sometimes. Say your name, blame herself, blame you, then cry like she forgot I was there." Michael felt his chest crack. "I should have been there," he whispered. Caleb nodded, still staring up. "One time she painted a bird on my wall, said it was a phoenix. She told me even burned things can rise again." Michael looked at him. "That's what you are, Caleb. You survived. You rose." Back at the penthouse, Caleb opened his sketchbook and showed Michael a page. A woman, drawn in charcoal, tired eyes and sharp cheekbones, holding a badge in her palm like a lifeline. "I made this last night," Caleb said quietly. "It's not perfect." Michael took the book gently. "It's her, and it's perfect." Later, Michael placed the sketch beside his desk next to the blueprint and the red car. He picked up his phone, heart heavy but clear. "Rachel," he said, "can we add some grief counseling into Caleb's sessions?" She agreed. That night, Michael found Caleb sitting alone by the window, knees hugged to his chest. "You okay?" Caleb looked out at the skyline. "I just keep wondering if she ever thought she made the right choice." Michael sat beside him. "She gave you the badge. She told you stories. She gave you something to believe in. Maybe that was her way of keeping hope alive." Caleb was quiet, then whispered, "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know she would, and I am too." They sat there, watching the lights flicker through the rain, the sketch of Lena drying on the table behind them, a symbol of pain, memory, and something still whole. Morning sun spilled into the penthouse, painting gold across the hardwood. Caleb sat at the kitchen counter, stirring cereal without eating. Michael stood nearby, briefcase in hand, watching the boy silently. "I've got meetings this morning," Michael said gently, "but I'll be home by 3. Thought we could check out the art supply store after." Caleb nodded, but didn't look up. Michael hesitated, then stepped closer. "You okay?" Caleb shrugged. "Just tired." Michael crouched beside him. "Talk to me, Caleb." The boy's voice was quiet. "I keep thinking, you live in a palace and I used to sleep next to a space heater in a hallway. Feels like I'm pretending." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not pretending, you're rebuilding." Caleb nodded again, still unsure. Michael left reluctantly. On the ride down, he stared at his reflection in the elevator glass. A man, in a tailored suit, carrying 10 years of regret in his chest. At the office, he couldn't focus. Charts blurred. Emails went unanswered. By noon, he canceled his afternoon meetings. He returned home earlier than planned. The apartment was silent. "Caleb?" he called. No answer. Panic bloomed. He checked the art room. Empty. Then the guest room. Gone. On the kitchen counter, a note was folded under the red toy car. Needed some air. "I'm fine. Don't worry." Michael grabbed his coat and headed out. His first stop was Bronzeville. Sure enough, near the corner store, Caleb stood beneath the same streetlight where they'd first met, hoodie up, hands in his pockets, staring at nothing. Michael approached slowly. "You always disappear without telling people where you're going?" Caleb didn't flinch. "Didn't think you'd notice." Michael exhaled. "I noticed the second I walked in." Caleb kicked at the sidewalk. "I felt weird, like I don't fit in anywhere." "You belong with me," Michael said softly, "even if we're still figuring out what that looks like." Caleb looked over. She never said it, but I think she was ashamed of what her life became. Michael nodded slowly. "Maybe, but she gave you strength, and she gave you to me." They stood in silence. Then Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "I drew something." Michael took it carefully. It was a portrait. Michael, with a skyline behind him, and Caleb perched on one of the buildings like a gargoyle, holding a paintbrush. "I call it the Watcher," Caleb said. "I used to imagine I could see you from rooftops. Thought if I waited long enough, maybe you'd look up." Michael swallowed hard. "I see you now, and I'm not looking away." They walked home in the cool afternoon air. That night, Michael heated leftover pasta. Caleb sat on the kitchen stool, hoodie gone, sketching in silence. After dinner, Michael tucked the drawing into a frame and placed it on his desk, right beside the red car and Lena's charcoal portrait. "I want you to know something," he said. "When I found out you were mine, I thought I'd failed you, that I'd lost too much time to ever make it right." Caleb looked up. "You didn't fail me, you just weren't there yet." Michael smiled, eyes full. "Well, I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Caleb nodded, then hesitated. "Do I have to go back to that school tomorrow?" Michael leaned against the counter. "Do you want to?" Caleb shrugged. "Not really, but if it helps you trust me, I'll try again." Michael's voice was gentle. "It's not about proving anything. We'll find a way that fits you, not the world's idea of you." The boy's smile came slow but real. Before bed, Michael passed by Caleb's door. The lights were off, but faint music played. On the wall, beside the Phoenix sketch, was a new phrase in red marker. "Every rooftop has a story." And under it, a single word in Caleb's handwriting, "Home." Michael stood there, heart steady, knowing that this time they were building something neither of them had ever had. The next morning, Michael brewed coffee as sunlight poured into the penthouse. Caleb sat across the counter, sketchbook open, face tight with focus. "Did you sleep okay?" Michael asked. "Yeah," Caleb muttered, not looking up. Michael hesitated. "You've been quiet since last night." The boy finally glanced up. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." Caleb swallowed. "What if I don't fit into your world? Like, ever?" Michael set his mug down. "Who told you that?" "No one had to," Caleb replied. "You have fancy dinners, press meetings, people in suits. I don't know which fork to use. I freeze in big rooms. I get dizzy when people stare." Michael stepped closer, voice calm. "That's not who I care about impressing. I care about you." Caleb looked down. "It doesn't feel like I belong in your life." I feel like I'm temporary." The words hit like a punch. Michael exhaled slowly. "You're not temporary, Caleb. You're the only part of my life that feels real." That afternoon, they walked downtown together. Michael pointed out buildings he'd developed: towers, museums, shopping centers. Caleb kept pace but didn't speak. At a stoplight, he asked, "Were you this rich when you were my age?" Michael laughed lightly. "Not even close. I was sketching buildings on the backs of junk mail. We didn't have much." "So, how'd you get here?" "I kept dreaming, even when I failed. Especially when I failed." Caleb nodded slowly. They stopped at an art supply store. Inside, Caleb's eyes lit up. Brushes, inks, canvases taller than he was. "Pick anything," Michael said. Caleb looked uncertain. "Seriously?" Michael smiled. "Seriously." The boy picked up a charcoal set and a sketch pad. He hesitated by a shelf of spray paints, then added 2 cans, one red, one gold. As they checked out, the cashier gave a look. "Nice haul," she said, eyeing Michael's suit. "Is he your little brother?" Michael smiled. "My son." Caleb glanced up at him, startled, but he didn't correct it. Back home, Caleb worked in silence. Michael returned to his office and opened his laptop, but his mind wandered. For all his success, he didn't know how to fix the invisible wall between them. The fear that no matter what he offered, Caleb wouldn't let himself believe it. Later that night, he peeked into Caleb's room. The boy had fallen asleep on the floor, curled beside a half-finished painting. It showed 2 figures on opposite rooftops stretching a rope between them. At the bottom, in faint red letters, Caleb had written, "Trying to cross." Michael swallowed hard. The next day, Caleb was gone again. No note, no message. Michael's chest tightened as he called the doorman. "Did my son go out?" "Yes, sir. Just after sunrise. Alone." Michael's pulse raced. He texted. Called. No answer. By noon, he was back in Bronzeville, retracing their old path. Then he saw him. In a narrow alley behind a gas station, Caleb was spray painting on a brick wall, hoodie over his head, completely lost in motion. Michael stepped forward. "You scared me." Caleb didn't turn. "I needed space." Michael walked closer. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to think I was slipping, like I was going back." Michael exhaled. "Caleb, I'd never think that. I know you're trying." Caleb looked over his shoulder. "I'm not trying. I'm surviving." "That's different." Michael's voice lowered. "Then let's survive together." Caleb wiped his hands on his jeans, finally facing him. "I wanted to finish this," he said. "It's where I used to come when I had nowhere else. Thought maybe it could be something new." Michael turned to the wall. The mural was stunning. A broken badge at the center, being pieced together by a boy and a man side by side. Caleb looked down. "Do you think we're actually fixing anything?" Michael nodded. "Every day, one piece at a time." As they walked home side by side, Michael said quietly, "Next time you need space, just tell me. I'll still give it, but I'll also wait." Caleb looked up, then said softly, "Thanks, Dad." And for the first time, Michael didn't just hear the word. He believed it. The next morning, Michael stood outside Caleb's room with a knock. "Hey, buddy, you awake?" "Yeah." Michael stepped in. Caleb was sitting on the floor, surrounded by open boxes of spray paint, pencils, and paper scraps. Michael smiled. "You planning a heist or an art show?" Caleb held up a folded paper. "Something like both." He opened it. A sketch of a room filled with graffiti. A real studio. Bright colors, brick walls, raw creativity. "I was thinking," Caleb said, "what if I had a space like this? Not in the corner of a bedroom. A real place." Michael knelt beside him. "Like a studio?" "Yeah," Caleb said, "but not just for me. For kids. From where I came from." Michael's chest tightened. "You want to teach?" Caleb shrugged. "Some kids don't want to talk, but they'll paint." Michael reached over, touching the corner of the paper. You've got vision. You know that? Caleb looked down. I want to give them something I never had. By afternoon, Michael was on the phone with his architect. Find me a space, he said. 1 floor. Open concept, near Bronzeville. We're building a youth arts center. Back home, Caleb paced the living room. You're really doing it? Michael nodded. I believe in it, and I believe in you. The next day, they visited a vacant warehouse just off 47th Street. The brick was worn, the floor cracked, but the light that poured in through the high windows was beautiful. Caleb's eyes went wide. This is perfect, Michael smiled. What do you see? I see a mural right there, he pointed, and tables for paint, lockers, a bench over there, and that wall, he paused. That wall is for the kids who never got a chance to speak. Michael looked around. Then let's get to work. They spent the week drawing plans. Caleb sketched his dream layout in pencil, carefully labeling each corner. He worked through meals, past bedtime, and when he was done, he handed the sketch to Michael. I call it the color room, he said. Michael framed it immediately and hung it in his office. But, even as progress rolled forward, something lingered in Michael's mind. That night, as Caleb painted quietly in his room, Michael opened a box from storage. Inside was a stack of letters, unopened, unsent, all written to Lena. One had a return address scratched out. Another was dated the year after she disappeared. He pulled out a photo tucked inside. It was of a younger Michael holding a baby, a snapshot he'd forgotten existed. He turned it over, written in faded ink. You'll always be my best what if. Michael's hands trembled. The next morning, he found Caleb already at the table, drawing. Michael placed the photo in front of him. That's us. You were a few months old. Caleb touched it lightly. She never showed me this. Michael sat beside him. I think she was afraid that if she let me back in, I'd leave again. Caleb looked up. Would you have? Michael didn't hesitate. No, I would have stayed. I would have fought for both of you. Caleb nodded, slowly. Then let's fight now. Later that day, Michael made a call to the city council. He scheduled a meeting, proposing the new art center with Caleb's help. You're bringing him in? The advisor asked. Michael smiled. It's his voice that matters. I'm just here to back it up. At dinner, Caleb slid another sketch across the table, this time of 2 hands holding a brush, painting over broken glass. I think it's called Rebuild, he said. Michael stared at the drawing, heart full. That's what we're doing. Every day. In the corner of the sketch, Caleb had signed his name for the first time, and beneath it, one word in gold ink. Hayes. Michael reached for the red toy car that still sat beside his plate. He whispered, We're almost there, son. Caleb looked up. We're just getting started. The first mural went up on a Tuesday. Michael stood by the scaffolding, watching Caleb spray vibrant color across the back wall of the new studio. Red wings stretched wide, a phoenix rising through concrete ash. Look what I made, Dad! Caleb called down, paint on his hoodie and a grin on his face. Michael smiled, chest full. It's beautiful. They worked for weeks. Contractors handled the floors. Volunteers painted the inside. Caleb chose every shade of every wall. He insisted on having a corner labeled Voice Wall, where kids could paint anonymously. No names, just stories in color. One morning, Michael walked into the studio and found Caleb standing near the door, staring at a name spray-painted in sharp silver, Lena. She deserves to be here, Caleb said quietly. Michael nodded. She does. Back at the penthouse, things began to shift. Caleb had a new schedule. School in the morning, studio in the afternoon. But with the change came tension. You don't have to wait outside school every day, Caleb muttered one evening. I'm not going to disappear. Michael set down his phone. It's not about control. It's about being present. Caleb stood up. Well, sometimes it feels like a cage. Michael's jaw tightened. I'm trying to keep you safe. I've been keeping myself safe for years, Caleb snapped. You think just because you showed up now I'm going to change how I breathe?" The words hit hard. Caleb stormed into his room, door slamming behind him. Michael stood alone in the silence, staring at the red car on the counter. That night, he knocked softly. "Can I come in?" No answer. He opened the door gently. Caleb was sitting on the floor, hoodie pulled over his head, arms wrapped around his knees. "I'm not trying to control you," Michael said. "I'm scared. Every time you walk out the door, I remember 10 years where I didn't know where you were. It eats me alive." Caleb looked up slowly. "I'm not trying to run, but you've got to stop acting like I'm broken." Michael sat beside him. "You're not broken. You're growing. And so am I." They sat in silence for a while. Then Caleb whispered, "I'm scared too. What if I mess this up?" Michael looked him in the eye. "Then we fix it. Together." A few days later, the press found out about the art center. Millionaire CEO builds graffiti school for troubled youth. One headline read. Another blared, Hayes Real Estate Founder Funds project for son of former addict. Michael turned off the screen. He looked at Caleb, who had just walked in from the studio. "We need to talk." Caleb saw the headline and froze. "You said you weren't going to let people use my name." "I didn't, but someone leaked it." Caleb's face darkened. "Now everyone's going to know. They're going to look at me and see pity, not art." "I'll fix it," Michael said. But Caleb shook his head. "You can't fix people. Just walls." Then he walked into his room without another word. That night, Michael stood by Caleb's door again, unsure if he should knock. Instead, he slid a drawing under the door, a sketch he made himself. Two figures standing side by side under a storm, holding the same umbrella. On the back, he wrote, "No matter what they say, we stand together in the morning." Caleb left the sketch on the kitchen table, taped to a new piece of paper. This time, he'd added color, red and gold. And above the umbrella, in bold spray paint letters, was one word. Us. Michael smiled. The city would talk. The media would spin. But in that moment, in a kitchen filled with quiet trust and spilled orange juice, Michael knew. Their bond was no longer just blood. It was earned, day by day, stroke by stroke, word by word. Michael stared at the framed sketch on the kitchen table. Us, painted in bold red and gold above two figures standing under one umbrella. Caleb walked in, wiping paint from his fingers with a rag. "It's not my best work," he said, voice flat. Michael shook his head. "It's exactly what we needed." The media storm hadn't stopped, but something in Caleb had shifted. He still flinched at whispers and glares, but he didn't shrink. He painted more, talked more, even helped organize the studio's opening week. One evening, Michael found him in the corner of the studio, sitting cross-legged with three younger kids. "You ever used charcoal before?" Caleb asked them. "It's messy, but it tells the truth." Michael watched from the doorway, heart swelling. Later, as they rode home in the car, Caleb leaned back. "One of the kids asked if I was your real son." Michael's hands tightened on the wheel. "What did you say?" "I said you're the only real thing I've had in a long time." Michael didn't speak. He couldn't. That night, Caleb left a sticky note on Michael's desk. "Thanks for staying, but trust, like paint, needs layers." 2 mornings later, Michael caught Caleb stuffing a hoodie into his backpack, eyes darting. "Where are you headed?" Michael asked. "Nowhere," Caleb said quickly. "Just needed space." Michael crossed his arms. "What's really going on?" Caleb sighed. "There's this kid at school, Kyle. He started saying stuff about Mom, about you." "What kind of stuff?" "That I'm just your project. That Mom was a junkie and I'll end up like her." Michael's eyes darkened. "Did you tell a teacher?" "I told my fist," Caleb muttered. Michael closed his eyes. "Did they suspend you?" 3 days. Michael exhaled. "Why didn't you come to me?" "Because I didn't want to be the kid who always needs saving," Caleb snapped. "I wanted to handle it like you would." Michael's voice dropped. "I didn't become who I am by swinging at every insult. I had to outgrow them, and you will too." Caleb stared at the floor. It's hard. Every time I think I'm okay, someone reminds me where I came from. Michael walked to his desk, pulled out a rolled-up poster, and unrolled it. It was his original tower sketch, drawn on the back of a pizza box years ago. I drew this when I had nothing but a busted pencil and hope, Michael said, and people laughed. Said I'd never build anything worth remembering. He pointed to a faint scribble in the corner. They don't see it yet. I wrote that when I felt invisible, he said, but I never stopped sketching, and you shouldn't either. Caleb took the pizza box sketch gently. You kept this? It's where everything started. That night, Caleb painted alone in the studio. When Michael checked on him, the boy was covered in paint, eyes glassy with emotion. I didn't mean to swing, Caleb said quietly, but it was like I could hear her voice again, saying I was nothing. Michael stepped forward. You are not nothing. You are every line you've ever drawn, every wall you've painted, every word you've survived. Caleb nodded. I want to believe that. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we'll keep repeating it until you do. By the weekend, the voice wall was filled with color, names, shapes, emotions. Caleb added one final piece, a red badge painted in the center glowing under soft studio light. Around it, he wrote, This saved me once. Now I pass it on. Michael stood behind him, overwhelmed. Do you think she sees this? Caleb asked. I think she never stopped. The wall stood tall, filled with wounds and wonders. It wasn't about perfect strokes, it was about truth. And together, father and son stood in front of it, covered in paint, hearts heavier, but whole. 2 days before the grand opening of the color room, Michael's office was chaos. Calls, interviews, donations flooding in, all sparked by the leak and now the buzz. But not everyone approved. Mr. Hayes, said Jenna, his head of PR, some investors are threatening to pull funding. They say aligning with urban activism doesn't reflect company values. Michael stood at the window, fists clenched. Then maybe our values are overdue for a change. Meanwhile, Caleb sat on a stool in the studio, staring at the mural. The badge he painted still glowed beneath the new overhead lights, but his mood was quiet. Rachel, the tutor, approached softly. You okay? Caleb didn't look up. They're turning this into a headline, like it's a show, not a home. You built this, she said. You get to decide what it means. He nodded slowly. That evening, Michael picked him up. Big press event tomorrow, he said. They want both of us to speak. Caleb flinched. I don't know if I can do that. Michael kept his eyes on the road. You don't have to be perfect. Just be honest. Caleb looked down. What if I freeze? Michael reached into the glove box and pulled out the folded napkin, the one from their first dinner together. Wish delivery. He handed it over. Keep this in your pocket. That wish already came true. Caleb held it tight, then whispered, Okay, I'll try. The next morning, they arrived at the studio to a swarm of cameras and reporters. Flashbulbs popped. Michael placed a hand on Caleb's back. We do this on our terms. Inside, the space buzzed with energy. Local artists, teachers, kids who had never touched a paintbrush before. Michael stepped up to the mic. Today isn't about charity, he said. It's about investment, in voices that have waited too long to be heard. He looked at Caleb, who stood just off stage, fingers trembling slightly. This place was inspired by someone who taught me what resilience really means, Michael continued. My son. Gasps and murmurs swept through the room. Michael turned to him. Caleb, you ready? Caleb stepped forward slowly. He held the mic like it might bite him. He took a breath. I used to sell newspapers in this neighborhood, he began. I used to sleep in a hallway with no heat. I thought no one saw me. He paused, hands tightening. But then, someone did. He pulled out the napkin and held it up. This was the first thing I drew after we met. It's called wish delivery. Back then, I didn't think wishes were real. I thought survival was the only thing that mattered. Caleb scanned the room. But this place, this wall, these kids, they're proof that maybe healing matters too. A quiet fell over the room. Not silence. Something deeper. Listening. When the event ended, Michael and Caleb stepped outside into the crisp air. "You were brilliant," Michael said. Caleb exhaled. "I was terrified." And still brilliant. As they crossed the street, a group of kids ran up, one holding a notebook. "Can you sign this?" a girl asked. "I want to paint like you." Caleb blinked. "Me?" Michael smiled. "You're somebody's role model now." That night, back at the penthouse, Caleb taped the napkin sketch on the fridge. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Not in your art room?" Caleb grinned. "Nah, I want to see it every morning. Reminds me what we built." Michael placed the red car beside it. 2 symbols. 1, dream. And beneath them, Caleb scribbled in marker. Started with a wish. Ended with a wall full of voices. Michael read it aloud, then whispered, "We're not done yet." Caleb nodded. "Nope, we're just getting louder." 3 weeks after the grand opening, the studio was buzzing with life. Brushes clattered, laughter bounced off the walls, and the once-empty warehouse pulsed with color and noise. Caleb stood near the voice wall, watching a group of kids tag their names in wild, cursive strokes. "Hey," one boy called, "you're the kid from the news, right?" Caleb shrugged. "Guess so." "You really lived in a hallway?" "Yeah." The kid nodded, impressed. "That's cool." Caleb cracked a smile. "Not really, but painting? That's where the good stuff starts." Meanwhile, Michael sat in a boardroom uptown, staring at a proposal from his executive team. "Michael," one partner said, "your visibility's up 30% since the project, but the investors are still antsy. They're asking if you're stepping away from real estate." Michael leaned back, jaw tight. "No, I'm building something bigger. One project just happens to be made of paint instead of glass." The room went quiet. When he returned to the studio later that day, Caleb was working on a new mural, this time of a young girl with wings, launching into a night sky. Michael paused beside him. "You've been quiet lately." Caleb kept painting. "I've been thinking." "About what?" Caleb finally looked up. "What happens if this all goes away? If you lose your business? If people stop caring?" Michael met his eyes. "If the buildings crumble, we paint new ones. If people stop caring, we care harder." Caleb wiped his hands. "You ever worry that being my dad cost you something?" Michael didn't hesitate. "You gave me something I didn't know I was missing, and I'd trade every skyscraper for that." That night, Michael was invited to speak at a charity gala for at-risk youth. He asked Caleb to come. "I don't want to dress up," Caleb said, eyeing the suit Michael laid out. "You don't have to," Michael smiled. "Just show up." Caleb chose jeans, a blazer, and red sneakers. He tucked the wish delivery napkin into his pocket. At the gala, under crystal chandeliers and watchful eyes, Michael took the stage. He paused before beginning, then said clearly, "There are 2.5 million homeless children in this country. Most of them don't end up in rooms like this, but one of them, my son, showed me what happens when you give a voice to the overlooked." He gestured toward the crowd. "This isn't charity. This is responsibility. It's legacy. And it's time we build more than towers, we build hope." Applause rippled. Later, donors approached him with checks, but Michael waved them toward the studio's website instead. Caleb stood in the corner, sipping soda, eyes scanning the crowd. A woman approached, elegant, soft-spoken. "You're the artist, right?" she asked. "I guess," Caleb said. "My daughter's been silent since last year, but today she painted for the first time in months." Caleb blinked. "What did she draw?" "A window and a bird." He smiled gently. "Sounds like she wants to fly." When they got home, Caleb dug through his bag and pulled out a small canvas. He handed it to Michael. "Made this for the gala. Was going to hang it in the studio, but I think it belongs here." Michael unwrapped it. It showed a silhouette, a man and a boy standing on a rooftop, a skyscraper behind them, and stars above. The man's hand rested on the boy's shoulder. Michael read the words beneath. He never left. He just hadn't arrived yet. He looked at Caleb. You mean that? Yeah, Caleb said. You didn't just come back. You showed up, and that's different. Michael placed the canvas on the wall, right beside the red car and the napkin, symbols of past, and now, and all that still waited ahead. They didn't need applause or headlines. They had each other, and a studio full of voices that wouldn't be silent again. On the morning of the anniversary, Caleb was already in the studio, hands covered in gold paint, eyes locked on a blank wall that had been intentionally left untouched. Michael arrived carrying 2 cups of hot cocoa. You didn't sleep, did you? Caleb shook his head. Couldn't. Today's the day she... Michael nodded, not needing him to finish. I know. They stood together in silence. Thought about skipping it, Caleb said, but that felt like erasing her, and I'm done with erasing. Michael set down the cocoa. What do you want to do? I want to paint her, Caleb said quietly, not like when she was sick, like when I remember her best. Michael stepped back. Then let's do it. Caleb dipped his brush into crimson first, sketching the outline. As he worked, more kids arrived, some with sketchbooks, others with paint. No one spoke. But they knew. By noon, the wall had transformed. A mural of Lena, arms open, surrounded by bright city lights and fragments of the badge. At the base, Caleb wrote, She gave me life. He gave me a future. Michael read the line, hand tightening around the red toy car in his coat. Later that evening, they hosted the first official community art class. Kids from Bronzeville, Englewood, and Pilsen arrived with parents, friends, and curiosity. Michael watched Caleb move between groups like a natural teacher. A girl held up a dripping painting. Look what I made, Caleb. He smiled. That's awesome. You blended those blues like a pro. Michael turned to the press quietly gathered near the door. We're not here to be admired, he said. We're here to multiply hope. And Caleb? He's leading that. After everyone left, Caleb flopped onto a beanbag chair in the corner of the studio. I'm exhausted, he said. You earned it, Michael replied, sitting beside him. There was a long pause. Then Caleb said, You know what I realized? What? This isn't just an art space. It's her story, and mine, and now it's theirs too. Michael looked around. Paint cans scattered, canvases drying, a wall glowing with Lena's image under soft lights. You're right, he said. It's legacy. That night, back at the penthouse, Michael opened his desk drawer and pulled out a fresh folder. Across the top, in bold marker, he wrote, Hayes, Foundation, Art for the Forgotten. Caleb walked in and noticed. You're making it official? Michael nodded. Grants, scholarships, traveling exhibits. I want your voice to reach more than walls. Caleb stepped forward. Ours, not just mine. Michael smiled, eyes full. Ours. Before bed, Caleb taped something new to the fridge. A photo snapped earlier that day. It showed him and Michael standing in front of Lena's mural, both covered in paint, arms slung across each other's shoulders. Under it, he wrote in blue Sharpie, The day we both came home. Michael added one final touch beneath, a small red star, the same shape Caleb used in every painting, tucked quietly in the corners. They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to, because trust, like paint, sticks when laid layer by layer, and love, the kind you fight for, always finds the surface. That night, with the city quiet beyond the glass, Michael turned off the lights. The mural shone faintly in his mind. The badge, the boy, the woman who'd carried them both through memory. He whispered into the dark, We didn't just survive, Caleb. We created something that lasts. And from the next room, half asleep, but listening, Caleb murmured, Together.